Hey, this is Keith from Save the Rust. So, since our last video, I installed the springer on. Had some new old stock bearings I put in, greased it all up, and rolls really nice. Again, using all new old stock parts. So what I did is I've pulled up a bunch of the parts that were in my display cases, and I'll go through them with you and show you what we've got so far. And I still have a lot of stuff to pull off of some other project bikes that I had put on, and now looking at them, those are new old stock parts that I got to remove so we can use them on this project. So let's go through the parts I pulled and start installing some more of this stuff. So here we've got a set of new old stock handlebars. I got these from my friend Milan at Milan's Motorcycles a couple years ago. If I remember correctly, he told me these came from the Harry Molinar's Harley Davidson, or Henry, sorry, one or the other. So these are complete. You know, obviously got some shelf wear. They've had a little bit of humidity in the past, but they are new old stock and they are complete. It's got the horn button. It's got the high-low beam switch. It's got the cables and the internal throttle and spark advance, including the rubbers, which say Harley Davidson on here. You know, really, I mean, these are perfect bars. Really nice to find. Everything rolls nice, you know, so it's nice finding this stuff. This is, again, Milan got these back in the 80s, and, you know, he told me they were new old stock, and I believe him. So we're going to put them on the frame right now. Just got to get the cables on past the point here. And they slide on beautifully. We'll cinch the pinch bolts, and but we still got a few other pieces to install first. So here are some of the parts we pulled out of the display cases. So we got some new old stock leg shields, horn cover, gas and oil, tail light, the kickstand mount, headlight and horn mount, front guide light, the square oil bath air cleaner, guide blackout light, the shift gate, and a few other small parts, including new old stock dampener, the belt crank or crank for the rear brake. So before going on, I wanted to kind of go over the frame again. I want to show people stuff that if it wasn't new old stock, you would know things. When you look at the holes here, there's no oblong in them at all. There is nothing anywhere. Like, if this wasn't new old stock, there'd be marks all on here. And not just paint marks, but actual gouges from the material. When I installed the back axle, it is so tight. There's no marks at all. You look on the inside here, and it's perfectly flat. Anyone who's ever seen one of these frames that's been in use, even for a short period of time, there's going to be markings from the metal gouging against it, from the spacers and everything else. Again, look at here. You can see how there was never a bushing installed. It's all green. you know, green paint comes off of my hand, you know, dust and dirt, but no grease. Never been greased. Another thing too is when you look at some of the areas where the paint has been taken off, you know, just from wear. You see this right here? You see how it's that brass? That's after they brazed on these axle forgings. You see how it's original paint over the brass? Nowhere do you see scuff marks, sandblast marks, or, you know, sanding marks, anything. It's just paint right over that original brass. So if this had been at any time simply repainted after the war and not directly from the factory, you would see that kind of you know, impression from sandblasting or from a wire wheel, from sanding to remove the old paint to the point where you'd paint over this and recreate an original finish. But you can see that hasn't been done. This is original. And one of the things you're going to notice is color. There's going to be color changes, color differences. You know, some of the stuff was painted, could have been a year or two later. And, you know, a different factory, different painting. If you've ever tried to match paint, even if it's a couple weeks later or something, there's always going to be differences, and there's going to be different colors. On every military bike I've even looked at, if I find original paint stuff, even from a different bike, there are changes in the color. So they weren't all the exact same green, you know. So don't let the color fool you. You know, so here's a, you know, new old stock, and you can see how it doesn't really match either. This one's a lot more lighter than that. So, you know, some of the stuff was getting painted at different factories also. Here's one, you know, one piece I wanted to kind of show you. This is a military Harley oil tank. If you look underneath here, you're going to see some paint. When I got this, it was completely red house paint, and I was able to get, you know, 99% of the paint off. And when it started coming off, it started showing military numbers. And one of the things you're going to notice is 2 different colors of green and 2 different sets of numbers. So on this, the original green, which looks a lot more like this green, and then the second time it was painted, see how this green looks a lot more like the handlebar green. So different eras even. Maybe those handlebars were made in the 50s, you know, for the Korean War. It's still new old stock. We just don't know. I don't know the eras of the different colors and paint and where it was all painted, etc. But what I'm going to show you is this tank. As if you look at it, there's an 8 period 921, and then when it was repainted, you can still make out the 8 point, and then you got to kind of look 9, and then there's going to be some here and a little bit here. So cool tank, you know, original paint twice, because you can see the original paint, and then you can see the repainted military paint after. This tank I found about 10 minutes from my house. It was in a barn, and the old guy just wanted to see it go to someone who was going to use it. And when I got it, like I say, it was red house paint, the entire thing. I thought, oh, perfect, just another 45 tank, until I started cleaning it and this appears, which is incredible. One of my most prized possessions because of its originality. So we're missing the cover that goes over top of this, and that the pin goes through and locks the stem nut off. But this is new old stock, and goes on so nice, and bottoms out really nice. One of the things that you'll notice when you're doing these old bikes is how the stem could be just a bit bent, and when you get to this point, you know, it might hit the side a bit, but that just slid so perfectly inside because everything's straight, everything's perfect. So next up is installing a dampener before the fender. So you can see this one's it's all painted, no parkerizing. These are the friction discs. Those are black. Tire rod's painted. This is the part that goes into the stem of the Springer. And I wanted to show you another one here. So we're missing the spring, we're missing the dampener arm, and I do have these two, the nut and the fiber washer also. So let's get this installed. So how this works is it goes underneath into this hole, goes through the stem of the Springer fork, comes out on top, and then this arm tucks into the frame, and you just got to make sure that the rod is around this piece here, so it locks in position. We'll get that back into the frame there. So that's how that all works. And this front piece goes into the Springer. So it all locks in together. Frame. That's the rod that locks into this. This locks into the Springer. Come on top. And then this slides in there and gets screwed into the top of the stem of the Springer. And again, we're missing a couple components. So on the top, we just have the nut left, but we're missing a couple components, so we'll just leave them out. Let's get that fender installed. So we got the handlebars on, pinch bolts are all tight, wires are run, and what we did is we got the front fender on. So again, this front fender is a WLA, 1942 and later, and there's something like after serial number 5200 or 52,000, I can't remember, probably 5200. That's when that was introduced. But those rockers are WLC, which are the outside rockers, not the inside rockers like a WLA. So we had to just pull the mounts out, probably an extra inch and a bit, just to fit. But it's on there, and I wanted to show you how it mounts, how those, in my previous video, I showed you on the fender how it had like they were concave, and then the Springer fork mounts are convex, so they fit into each other. I'm going to show you what I mean. So here we got the fender on. You can see how it slides up into this area, and right in here you can see how the fender will go into the receiver of the Springer. It's indented. So after installing hardware, again, not new old stock hardware, just parkerized hardware I had. I don't have the originals. They sat into the fender back here. they weren't a hex bolt. They were actually, I believe, a pan head. But you can see how there's no space anymore between here and the fender. That raised crown went right into here and locked it in position. 42 WLAs after the first 2500, and 1943 WLC models use this bracket. I'll show you how it works. So these two holes here on the front fender, that's for the scabbard and ammo box, but it also uses this mount. And this mount goes like this, and it fits in between here. And then it mounts down here. You can see this side's perfect and that side's a little high. I'm not sure if that's because of the way the other mount is, or if I have to angle it a bit, whatever the case may be. So what they did is they put the headlight lower and the horn higher because there was a lot of accidents and a lot of headlights got damaged when they were mounted higher. So this protected the headlight a little bit more. But what it did is on 42 WLCs, there was a toolbox here like this. And they took it off in 43 because the headlight was here. The toolbox would have been in the way. So horns on top, headlights on bottom. Let's get it mounted. So here we have a 42 WLA, blackout light, front fender light, and 51 to 52 WLA. And you can see right here on the fender, it's got the hole and the locating pin, just like this. And you can see the wire inside, it's been broken off. So we won't worry about that right now. And that just goes right on there. So here's an interesting one, and it shows there's all these differences over time, and you know, some of it's been documented, some of it might not be. So I'm having a bit of time figuring out exactly if this is a motorcycle or Jeep. So I'm going through the Palmer book, and a Jeep one doesn't have the drain holes. It also doesn't have the guide stamped here. Okay, so I'm not sure if just the front section is WLA, but on the back, when I'm looking at the back side of the Jeep one, the difference is this wire is larger diameter than the WLA. So, and the end is a male end. So this wire is WLA, but the biggest difference is there's no switch. And I have switches. I have Newell stock switches in the original boxes. And, you know, people have modified these to fit the toggle. And there really isn't much difference. So some of this, and you can see it's Newell stock. Look at the, it came with a cover on, like the rubber cover that held that. So it's never been screwed. But I mean, when you look at the screw here, like it doesn't look like it's ever been turned. You know, it just, you know, stuff that you got to debate within yourself sometimes, I guess. So in order for me to, you know, make this really WLA, I'd have to install the light, the toggle, which I have, Newell stock. So again, a little bit of controversy. You know, this is all WLA. This ring is WLA. The body is probably Jeep because it doesn't have the toggle, but I have the toggle, so I can make this WLA. And then the hole for the wire is just a bit smaller for WLA because it's a single wire. Not that this isn't a single wire, but it's just, it didn't have the loom. So I'm going to install it anyway. It's going to look the part, and I have this switch. So feel free in the comments to tell me I'm right, wrong, or neither. Here's the mount that came with that light. Hard to tell if it's new old stock or newer repop or not. It is new for sure. Just not knowing the history on it, it's hard to tell if it's new old stock or not. I'm not quite sure myself. Let's see if it fits though. So you can see we got the mount on. I am missing a concave washer that would go on between the two. Kind of like same style for a mirror. There will be a list of stuff that, you know, minute pieces that we'll have to find over time. That's a given. Looks pretty good to me. So there are the switches that would go on top of that blackout light. There's the original box. You can read it. Blackout light toggle. So need to figure out how these leg shields are going to mount. What else what I'm missing. I've never mounted leg shields. I've actually never seen WLA or WLC in person with them on, so we're going to have to figure that one out. So we'll see what if I got everything. So I installed the gas tank or the oil tank on it. I had to. I've literally looked at this thing for years and wondered what it looked like on a chassis. It's not there to stay. It's not new old stock. I understand, but just looks so good on there. So we're gonna leave this video off at that. Next thing I gotta do is I gotta pull that motor out and possibly a few more pieces that I've been eyeing up that I think are new old stock, and then add them to this project. But I'm liking it so far. Looks pretty cool. Awesome, I like it. So, I'm Keith, Save the Russ. This is what we do, this is who we are. Have a great day.